All right, so this is a crazy one again, and we've done 2 videos now on JonBenet Ramsey, right? One of the most notorious, interesting, most viewed cases that has ever came up, ever. There are so many question marks and so many possible suspects that all make sense. Like, you can literally put all the suspects up on a wall and throw a dart at the wall and have good enough evidence, it feels like, to convict any of them. It is the craziest thing. But everyone always goes back to the note, right? There is something...
The monkey wrench.
Yes, there is something unexplainable about the note. Well... One, I'm going to talk about a comment here because we got a lot of engagement on those videos, which I love. I appreciate that, and I want them to keep coming. What's interesting is I had 2 comments that somebody left me that is a very, very, very different suspect, okay? That makes a lot of sense, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. And but when I went to go back and look for them yesterday, I couldn't find them. So I don't know if the person deleted them, but I wanted to give them credit. So if you're watching this and you were the one that left those comments, I appreciate it, and a shout out to you. I wish I could have given your name, but I don't know, maybe it's a good thing I'm not giving your name, because as I was doing the research on this, I realized that on forums in the past, people have talked about this suspect, and this suspect came after them, sued them, literally sued them, which makes me a little bit nervous talking about this, but we're still going to talk about it because, like, what if we catch
our mission statement?
Yeah, if we catch a lawsuit, I mean, I'll just put out a video saying, hey, we caught this lawsuit. And just as a disclaimer, like, dude, we didn't come up with this. Well, we're just going through the possible suspects and people that were involved. And anybody that's connected to the Ramseys, you gotta be able to suspect that you're going to be talked about.
And this is obviously all alleged. Like, nothing we're saying should be taken as 100% truth fact. It's speculation. It's alleged. That's not suable.
Yeah. And
you can't win that.
And the details of this came from books, articles, and everything else that we didn't connect. But I haven't heard of this person, okay? Do you know who I'm talking about yet?
No.
Okay, so I am talking about John Ramsey's banker, Rod Westmorland, right? Let me see. I wrote the name down here. Yeah, Rod Westmorland, which is a financial big shot, big time millionaire, if not billionaire, investor, banker. He's big time. He's a really big financial guy out of the Atlanta area.
Huh.
Well,
wait, Atlanta? So he never lived in Boulder?
I don't believe he lived in Boulder, or maybe he had a second home in Boulder. Oh, yes. He was living there. But
so at the time of the he lived in Atlanta when they lived in Atlanta, and then lived in Boulder when they lived in Boulder.
Yes, I believe so. If I'm wrong, I'll just come back and correct it in the description. Since we're not doing full stories here, I didn't dive into all the details of Rod Westmorland. So that Rod Westmorland was John Ramsey's best friend and banker, one of his best friends, okay? And apparently Rod has some sort of connection to Ghislaine Maxwell. They use the same attorney or something like that, based on what this comment was and the details that I was reading here. Yeah, so going back to the 118,000, okay? Mm-hmm. So some people speculate that it is somebody that is in the banking industry or financial industry because of how they wrote the 818,000 with the decimal point and cents. Because in the banking world and financial world, that's habit. It's not like you're going to say, oh yeah, let me place an order of this amount of stock for 118K. No, you write out the whole denomination, everything, past the decimal, right?
Okay.
So now, when JonBenet went missing, John called his bank to get this money ready.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about that in the other stories, and I didn't realize that he reached out to him. Well, he called Rod's office to get this money ready, okay? And Rod was out of the country, had just left that night or the morning before. So he got his front desk person, whatever, and she was like, oh, okay, John, I'll get in contact with him, reached out to Rod. Rod called him back and said that he was going to be able to have that ready for him. So all of that went through Rod. Now, with his financial and bank checks, Rod would have known that amount too. Would have known it exactly. He also would have known the where John worked at. And you know how it's signed at the bottom? So a lot of people theorize that those initials are actually where John worked and would have been printed on his checks.
Yeah, but what's the point of putting that in the ransom letter?
To give some sort of connection without making a direct connection.
Like a taunt?
Hinting, taunting. Yeah, and you know that part in the note that says, John, you're not the only fat cat?
Yeah.
So did you know when they were in Atlanta, both Rod and John were part of the Atlanta Fat Cats?
What is that?
It's a club, a group of guys.
Like a gentleman's club?
Yeah, financial, well, I mean, not a gentleman's club, that's women. But this is a club of men in the business world, so...
Yeah, there's like old school gentleman clubs that don't necessarily have strippers.
I get it, but nowadays...
Like a cigar type lounge
like
where they go all hang out and talk business.
Yeah. So, whoever this was... That fat cat statement makes it less likely it's Gary Oliva.
Yeah. And the way they wrote out the money makes it less likely.
And the way they wrote out the money, yep. And the fat cat statement. That's interesting because that is from before them living in Colorado. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
When I was reading this comment, my wheels started turning, and I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this name. And we keep saying, this is literally like an onion. There is more information and more information and more information. And everybody knows you follow the money always, okay? Well, where does that money lead? It leads back to Rod Westmorland.
So is there any speculation on what a motive would have been?
No major motive because John kept communicating with Rod after. But apparently in the book that was released through John, Rod made some weird statements about the whole fat cat thing, and people speculate that there was hidden knowledge at that time about the garrote that Rod knew about. However, I don't think that's good evidence because if John's best friends with Rod, John knew he was there and he could have shared that with Rod. Right?
See, I almost wonder if it's not like what we are talking about, where like someone who was a disgruntled worker or someone in John's life got mad at him and then tried to hire
That's what I
Gary
think too. Is
Oliva.
that I think both of those things can be true. I think both of those things can be true.
I agree with that, and I question because for him to break in the house and get his hands dirty like that, being as rich as he is I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yep.
So it makes me question if he didn't hire him and he actually himself wrote the ransom note, or maybe gave Gary, like you need to include these specifics, and that's why Gary had to keep rewriting it and practicing it. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I need to include this, I need to include this, and like maybe he wanted to have those specifics in the note to hint to John.
I agree.
But
I think it's very possible more than one person is involved here.
Me too, and which could mean why it's so hard to figure out who it is. Because
agree.
It's not just one.
Because simultaneously, whoever it is, or multiple people, whoever it is, the police still messed up that crime scene.
Oh,
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They screwed up the crime scene to where nothing could be taken seriously, honestly, in a court of law.
And they worked backwards.
And they worked backwards because they believed it was the Ramseys. However, and this person says, I'll read off their points. They said, the Ramseys were framed by a really clever killer. Before the 911 call, all is done to make the Ramseys look guilty. Even the small foreign faction was written with Ramsey's pen and paper, which makes the Ramseys look guilty. The initials matched his job perfectly. 2, the Ramseys paintbrush is used when it's not needed. JonBenet can be strangled by a hand or strangled with just the rope, or she could have been smothered by a pillow, or just hit in the head again. Adding the paintbrush to this crime to make the garrote after already adding the Ramsey's pen and Ramsey's paper is further proof to the Ramseys frame up, which that all I get that all makes sense. Why take these really weird specific things from all over the house to further make it look like it was the Ramseys, right?
It makes sense to frame someone you would use things from in the house, but then we have the contradicting evidence of the duct tape not being from the home. It was brought from outside, and they never found the roll of duct tape.
Yeah.
And also the rope found in a brown paper bag under the bed in the guest room, which was used for the garrote.
Yeah, I get it. I understand it, which makes me feel like it was someone close that could have stayed in that guest bedroom and already had this planned. Was this about... could John have been in something shady for real, something criminal, and could John really know what this is connected to, but would incriminate him on something else that he can't speak about? Like, these are all really good questions in this case, where when they first said this name, I was like, before I read the comment, and this was a really long comment, and again, I appreciate it. If you're watching this and you're the one who left it, I appreciate it a ton. I went into this comment thinking, dude, I am bought in on Gary Oliva. Like, there's too many details there, okay?
Yeah.
But after I read this, I was like, oh, man, I don't know. Because that fat cat comment, that person has to know of John's background, or was in Atlanta when he was in Atlanta, or some other connection that's unknown.
Yeah, but a fat cat is
not common language for the 90s. That's common language for like the 60s and 50s.
Yeah, but it comes from like old films, is where I think I've heard it before, like the fat cat, the big businessman. It's a known term for like a fat cat businessman, like a big shot.
That's quite a coincidence, because in the 90s, no one was saying, oh, look at that fat cat businessman. That was not a term.
Okay.
That died in like the 60s.
Okay, but how old were the people involved?
I understand that, but again, that's a coincidence.
Yeah, it's weird.
Huge coincidence that he was an active part and member of the Atlanta Fat Cats. And then them to say, you're not the only fat cat. Dude, they are not talking about him being a businessman. This was the 90s. If this crime happened in the 50s, when terms like that were a big deal, yeah, I might agree. But nobody in the 90s was walking around calling businessmen, look at those fat cats. You know what I mean? Like, that was the time of, what's that band? The whatever cats. black or alley cat fever or whatever.
I don't know.
Okay, but that's that, that's that time frame. So, all right, 3, the paintbrush just left hanging from JonBenet's neck after strangulation and not thrown away is proof somebody wanted the Ramseys arrested. If the crime was actually done, the paintbrush would have been thrown away after strangulation. Amazing point. Amazing point. Why wasn't the crime scene cleaned up? If you're a criminal and you're going to do a crime, you're not going to do all this stuff and then just leave it and walk away. No, you take things with you because those are evidence.
Yeah, I think that's why some people believed that the parents, like that. I think that was one thing people were saying about Bert doing it, is like the parents staged it.
Know.
That the parents staged it after.
Staged it to look like them? It doesn't point to anyone but them.
Well, trying to stage it to look like an intruder.
With all their things, their pen, their paper, their
who said it was
paintbrush?
smart? Who said it was smart? I don't know.
But John was extremely smart.
Yeah,
And
he was.
a very, very intelligent man that had money and ran with circles, that had information about how crime works, how the law works, things like this. To think that the parents could be involved, but leave all that incriminate them, makes me feel like there might be something to this.
Yeah.
There might be something to this.
Yes, there might be.
And then for John to call him and him be out of town the night of the crime.
Well, he just left, yeah.
That's an amazing alibi.
Yeah.
Rock solid, airtight.
Yeah, I wasn't in town.
Alibi. I wasn't in town. You can't look at me. I wasn't there.
Very convenient.
It is convenient. So, the killer's plan was to frame the Ramseys to get revenge on John Ramsey. Then on top of the frame-up, the killer tried to trick the Ramseys into thinking JonBenet was kidnapped by hiding her body in the basement long enough for the Ramseys to follow the ransom note. Which, again, good point, to try and get some kind of money while the actual crime was already done. Not call police or friends, give the killer $118,000, and JonBenet will be found dead, hidden in the Ramseys' home, and the Ramseys were framed. So this shook me right there. So not call police or friends. So whoever did this was really smart, because if by chance the Ramseys wouldn't have called police, they absolutely 100% would be behind bars right now.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, they would be.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, they would.
So this person had a multi-layer approach here to where they should have been caught up. Which, when I look back at this, I'm actually surprised the Ramseys didn't go to prison. All the crime was everything from inside of their house, from different areas of the house. The mom's art supplies, the pad and pen from the desk, the everything. Like it was in their house, and they believe that the flashlight was used or whatever that couldn't be found. Another area of the house, right? So everything was done inside the house, and then
they found the flashlight. It was sitting on the kitchen counter.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And so if they wouldn't have called the police, they 100% would have been caught up for this.
Yeah, I think so, because they would have been seen as, like, extremely dishonest. Yep.
Give the killer $118,000, and JonBenet will be found hidden in the Ramseys' home, and the Ramseys are framed. To make it look like they paid somebody. The 118. The frame-up of the Ramseys is the killer's cake. The 118,000 would have just been icing on the cake. But this killer made a mistake by trying to obtain the 118,000, because now it becomes a follow the money case, which has been used by detectives to solve thousands of cases involving money. by just following the money. And if you follow the 118,000 money trail in this case, then it leads to one person, John Ramsey's best friend at the time, who was also his banker friend, Rod Westmorland. Interesting, right?
Yeah, I'm so curious what his motive could have been. But, you know, one thing that you said in this was that it was signed with his company's, like, initials.
Yeah.
I don't know how that lines up because it signed SBTC.
Yep.
His company was Access Graphics.
No, hold on. We don't have time to dig into that. I will come back and show you, but it does line up for at that time. It's who he was contracted through working for. But yeah, so the SBTC does line up with one of the companies that he was contracted with or working with at that time. But I believe that that's the exact question I asked when I responded to this comment. Exactly. And this person responded with the answer where I was able to then verify it that that company was around at that time and John was part of it in some form or fashion. It had something to do with a training center or whatever that proved he had some kind of connection to the past. So
I wonder why it would be signed with that specifically.
yeah, because again, whoever this is with the fat cat thing, like I understand that you're writing it off, but it doesn't match.
I'm not writing it off.
It doesn't match the words that were used in the 90s. Nobody was saying fat cat then. That is super strange. A random person wouldn't come in and be like, "You're not the only fat cat." Words change with generations, and that includes older people. Older people don't hang on to these words that aren't used around them. Words change. That was a direct reference to his past, and I think that the initials were a direct connection to his past, and I think that it was, letting him know that there's something up here.
I think it's too big of a coincidence, so I'm not writing it off. I was providing an alternate theory to think about.
Yeah.
Could it have been used in a different context where it wasn't a hint? But I do think it's way too big of a coincidence, so it probably does absolutely have something to do with it.
Yeah, but I figured we're going to dive deeper into this theory. I just wanted to do an update because with this being, the update episode and talking about some of our viewers' comments and everything, I found this very interesting and something I had never considered before. It's not something I ever came across as we started looking into the JonBenet case. Now, remember, too, for those people out there that have been following this for years and years and years and years and years, we've only just started digging into it, or myself has only just started digging into it since we started becoming officially a true crime podcast. So I have a lot to catch up on, and this is a new name to me, and I found it very interesting, and the how things line up here was eye-opening. I don't know why I didn't look at this case and think, wait, why was this evidence left with her? That doesn't make sense. That does not sound... The only thing it could be is it's like Gary Oliva in a crime of passion and the parents wake up, he hears something and they have to run. That makes sense too. Or it's intentionally left and taken from very specific parts of the house that make a connection to the parents. Yeah. Like, I can't think of anything else.
Because, it's her mom's paintbrush.
It's her mom's paintbrush. It was very likely the flashlight for the hitting.
Which is her father's.
Right. And then what's interesting is the garrote wasn't needed.
No.
That's a weird weapon to use against somebody. That wasn't needed. The paintbrush wasn't needed. You could have strangled someone with just the string or just hands.
But... it seemed like she was, SA'd, so maybe it was it was all sexual-based.
While using two hands?
No, it wouldn't have been while doing that necessarily, but...
You have to let go.
Okay, I know. I'm talking about the whole motive
I understand.
behind it.
I get what you're saying. I'm thinking in the act here, okay? So using that during an assault... can't happen because that requires two hands. You cannot control the body and control the garrote. So it wouldn't have been used in that.
Well, there's also the evidence of a stun gun being used. So that could have been, and it was used repeatedly.
Yeah, but then it goes back to why add the paintbrushes to make your job harder? The garrote doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up. If you're going to go through with a garrote, why wouldn't you just use your hand? If you're going to go through with that, why not just use the string? Like, there's so many other options that now that I'm looking at it, it doesn't make sense why that paintbrush was there.
Like, you went through all that time to break, like, find a paintbrush, break it, and,
and made your job 10 times harder than it ever needed to be if you're a killer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
When you look at, like, professional killers like BTK, none of them use a garrote.
Well, and none of them, like, go find things from in the house to make into a makeshift garrote.
Yeah, garrote, period.
Yeah.
Like, at all, because it's not convenient. It doesn't help with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, interesting stuff. But I want to know what you guys think. And have you heard about Rod Westmorland before? And
I hadn't. Well, actually, no, I hadn't.
If Rod Westmorland is watching this, don't try and sue us, you know?
I mean, you can't win anyway.
Yeah.
Everything's alleged.
Yep.
We have no idea what we're talking
It's
about.
all off
we're
the
just
internet.
two dumb idiots talking, flapping our lips online, like...
Yep, but anyways, and the person that left this, leave some more details. I would love to know more details about this. They made a comment saying that people that have been following this for a long time and are heavily invested in this, for the most part, believe this is what happened.
Interesting.
So, but when people are looking into this, because it involves rich and money and everything else, it tends to get a tin hat put on it. So, which I get.
Yep.
I understand it.
I understand it too.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, there's so many people involved and nobody's been caught for this crime. So I feel like the more you dig, the more naturally it's going to become that.
Yes. Yep. I agree.
Like, there's no avoiding it.
Yep.
So.
I agree. But let me know what you guys think.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.